Lionhearts, your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are all of you today? Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Well, we're going to start our day out at the park. John needs to go to the park. He's been staring at me for the last hour, and I know what that means. So I'm giving in. We're going to go do it, and then we're going to head off to Chatsworth, and we're going to hit a cemetery today that I've never been to, and a pretty cool dude. I actually, way back when I first started vlogging, I actually catered an event at this man's old home and the home that he died in. And the person that lived there at the time was nice enough to, and I told her what I did with my channel, she was nice enough to go, yeah, go ahead, you can go ahead and film and show the inside of the house, and showed me one of the coolest rooms in the house that he used. So today we're going to go to Chatsworth and we're going to go visit the grave of the great Fred Astaire. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. I might also try and drive out to Paso Robles and go visit Stefan. Who knows? I'm feeling adventurous. We'll see what happens. Holy cow, look at that crew. They're all fired up already. This ought to be great. Hello. Now, Fred Astaire is truly an amazing story because he's someone who failed 2 screen tests, and in fact they said after a screen test he can't act, he can't sing, he can sorta dance, bad hairline. I mean, they just put everything down about him, and yet in the end he would be voted number 5 on the 100 all-time leading men list. Now, though he had a very famous partnership with Ginger Rogers, making 10 feature films, that probably wasn't his greatest partner, because for most of his life he only danced with his sister Adele. They were dancing together professionally from the time that Fred was 4.5 years old, and she's also buried next to Fred Astaire, so we'll see her today as well. Very little action out here today. Chase! Jeez, Jaw, come on, man! Are you just gonna watch all day, or are you gonna play with anybody? So in vlog time it's only been a couple of days, but in real time it's been about 7 days since I got this tattoo, so it's getting pretty close to being healed up. There's a little bit of flaky skin still on there, but the rule of tattoos is not to remove it, let it fall off on its own, so best results. Came out pretty good. What do you think, Jaw? You think you'll ever get a tattoo? Probably not. Like I said, I've never been out here. This is called Oakwood Memorial Park. We're actually going to be out this way again tomorrow. I'm 99% sure. This cemetery is way back, way tucked back in a neighborhood. Pioneer Church is in here as well. Not exactly sure where they are here. I have a rough idea. There's the Pioneer Church. I actually think there's a service going on over where Fred Astaire is buried, so come over here first. It's a church from the early 1900s that they moved onto the property here. It's actually kind of a busy day out here at the cemetery. I may have to do this just in photos because there's so many funerals going on out here today. Well, here he is. The great Fred Astaire, also born Frederick Austerlitz. I think I first saw him when he was doing the
they made the Diet Coke commercial with him dancing with Paula Abdul. But that pretty much goes to show you how influential he was in pop culture. Now, he started his professional career at 4 years old. His sister showed a lot of signs of being a great dancer, and so they put her in a dancing school. He didn't really want to do it, but he liked mocking her and mimicking her dances. He had an interest more so in doing the musical instruments, and then eventually the parents would put the two kids together and make them a dancing duo, a vaudeville duo. And they would start out in Omaha, Nebraska, where he was born, doing the dancing together, and then their father would lose his job and end up moving the family to New York City, where he thought that the kids would have a better chance at a better career in being performers. So that's what they did. Now here we have his first wife, Phyllis, and there is their mother, Anne, and his sister and dancing partner, Adele, all buried near him. Now Fred, he pretty much took over the act by the age of 14. They were a dancing duo, and they were becoming really popular, and they were on Broadway. They were performing all over the US in touring groups, and they eventually made it over to London and had become pretty well known. But the labor laws at the time were kind of cracking down, and they felt like they were getting a little bit of heat. Plus, Fred was younger, so he was a little bit smaller than Adele, and the height difference started to show, and they would try and disguise it by him wearing top hats or wearing a crab costume or lobster costume or these various different things. But eventually they just decided they needed to take 2 years off and let the kids be kids and grow into their bodies. But they did keep dancing, and they did keep that continuous passion for doing it, and they would come back and they would end up be dancing together from basically 1903 or 4 till 1932. Now here's Adele's grave, and Adele eventually quit the act because she got married, and she was pretty much the polar opposite of Fred. They said that Fred was always the constant worrier and Adele was the carefree one. In fact, one of the things he said was one of his nightmares was one of the nights that she went out and got drunk and the next day didn't show up for a performance, and then showed up while the music was playing, while they were supposed to be performing, and didn't seem to care. He said it was the only time he ever slapped her because he was so worried he just didn't know what to do. Now Fred basically, like I said, ran their act. He was constantly looking for new music, learning new dances, and that's what separated them from everyone. They were learning the tango and the foxtrot, and they become a really well-known tap dancing duo, and would even go out and do screen tests, but the verdict on the screen test was that it was horrible. So they just went back to doing Broadway until Adele ended up getting married. When she got married, she decided to retire, and Fred had to go off on his own, which was a little bit of trouble because, you know, he'd always dance with the same partner. And when you dance with your sister, I would imagine it would be hard to have a romantic dancing style, so he had to learn to dance on his own with different partners, and would set off to have a solo career, which is what he always wanted, because he knew he had been tied to his sister for so long that it was hard once he broke away to be taken as a solo act seriously. And he would eventually become one of the main dancers in Hollywood. And we'll also put one here. And one over here as well. Now, once Fred started becoming a big name all over the world on Broadway himself, he eventually came back and decided he wanted to try movies again and cut another screen test, this time having a similar result. They basically said he wasn't good looking, he couldn't act, he couldn't talk, he could kind of dance, he couldn't sing, he had big ears, he had a bad jawline, everything. But David O. Selznick was at RKO at this time, and he knew that Fred was known to be a great dancer, and he said despite all the shortcomings, this guy has an amazing amount of charm, and he decided to take on Fred Astaire and put him in movies. And he started by loaning him out to MGM to be in a movie with Joan Crawford and Clark Gable, and he did a great job in there. And then next thing you know, he was paired up, not as a top biller, but paired up with Ginger Rogers. And once they ended up making that movie, which was they're Flying Home to Rio, they stole the show. And the choreographer said, I went and met with Fred when I first found out he was going to be in it, and he was already working on a solo. He showed it to me, and I realized this guy really had a handle on what he wanted to do. He was a consummate perfectionist his entire career, and pretty much from the time that he started making these dancing films, which he really revolutionized that art form, he was a perfectionist and got to call all the shots. He got to decide how they filmed it, how they would only do it in minimal takes, they would do long shots, and he really made it a work of art. Instead of just throwing a dance in there, he really wanted the dance to further the storyline along, and he did just that with 10 movies with Ginger. Now, they tried to only exclusively let him be with Ginger originally, but he said there's no way he was going to let that happen. It took him too long to be established on his own and break away from being a pair, but he would make movies with her because he saw that people loved him. He just wanted to be able to make movies with other actresses as well, and that's exactly what he did. He made movies, you know, he idolized being in vaudeville. He idolized Rita Hayworth's parents, and so he wanted to work with Rita Hayworth, which he did. He made 2 movies with her and put her really on the map, propelled her to stardom. He made a great movie with Judy Garland. He made Funny Face. I mean, he really did a lot of movies that showed he was an extraordinary talent, and David O. Selznick was right. There was some sort of charm that he had that just made everyone look better when they performed with him or on screen with him. And his co-star Ginger Rogers is also buried here, but we'll come back and do that another time. You know, I thought it was interesting that when Fred Astaire was really making most of his most popular movies, it was during the Great Depression. And 6 of the movies that he and Ginger Rogers made for RKO were 6 of the top grossing money-making movies that RKO ever had. And it was during the Great Depression, in a time where those movies, if you go back and rewatch them, they were very lush, they were very extravagant, they were the interiors were all white, they had pools going underneath these lavish staircases, and yet people wanted to go out and see Fred and Ginger dance. Well, we are going to call it a night. Thank you, Mike Bryant, Gina, Shannon Hale, for all becoming Patreons. If you've never watched a Fred and Ginger movie, go out and watch Swing Time or Top Hat or Carefree. Go out and enjoy it. You'll love it. It's a great time. Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow. Whoopsie. Have a great night and goodbye.